On today's show, according to Tim McMahon, the Dallas Mavericks have had conversations about Deandre Ayton. Should the Dallas Mavericks consider a trade? And is there something going on with the Jazz and the Mavs? We'll talk about that and more on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks.
Mavericks, NBA champions. Bang! It's good, and the Mavericks have won the game.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Loyalty never fades away.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Thanks for being part of the show, making Locked On Mavs your first listen each and every day. We are free and available on all podcast platforms, including YouTube. But the best way you can help us grow the show is to, 1, listen every day, and 2, comment anything below. Let us know, would you trade for Deandre Ayton if you were the Mavs? You have to give some stuff up to get some stuff. Is that a risk worth taking? This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Joining me, as always, my co-host, writer, and contributor at Mavs.com, the rumor renegade, the one more thing king. What you got for me, Isaac Harris?
I thought you were doing like an interpretive dance over there.
I did do a lot of hand motions just now in the intro.
I learned a brand new word today.
Oh.
If you're in Dallas, then you're going through some weather stuff. Hopefully
Squall?
you're staying No.
That's a
Hopefully
winter weather thing.
You're staying safe out there as, you know, if Dallas gets just a tad bit of ice, the city shuts down. No one knows what to do.
I love it. I love it every time. I'm like, snow day's coming. Let's go. Everything's closed down.
I love it too. And my wife loves it because I'm working from home. So we're in the house with the family, playing in the snow today. And, well, it's not even snow. But the phrase I heard today, thunder sleet. It didn't mean like snow. It was a thunder sleet and I've never heard like thunder and storms during ice and snow. So this is a whole new thing for me. So it thunder sleeted today. It's like a wrestling name.
My dog was so confused today. He was like, it's snowing outside. He's like, he's seen snow before. He's like, it's snowing, but there's thunder. Usually it's rain. And I'm like, don't worry, it's an airplane. he was like, okay. But yeah, there was like balls of like airsoft balls, like you know those airsoft pellets. It was like that size of like hail, and then it was thundering at the same time. It was the weirdest thing that I've been a part of too. The world is things are happening. Things are happening to our world. Today's episode, we're gonna get into some rumors according to Tim McMahon, Zach Lowe. They had a great conversation on their podcast about all kinds of different teams. They talked about the Mavs for a good bit and shared some news and some rumors that the Dallas Mavericks have had talks in different ways. We'll talk about the Deandre Ayton rumor. That was a new one that I hadn't heard yet. We'll talk about what that means and how real that is and all that, if the Dallas Mavericks should consider that. We'll talk about Utah because it seems like fingers, something is happening in Utah. Everybody's talking about the Jazz right now, and apparently they're sellers. Finney-Smith has been linked to the Jazz and all that. And then should the Mavericks be sellers or buyers? So there's all kinds of different directions the Mavericks should go. So we'll talk about all that today. Let's get into this. Okay, according to Tim McMahon, who's very plugged in, one of the few reporters we really trust about Dallas Mavericks stuff, when he says something that he has heard and says that it's sourced, we believe it from the Dallas Mavericks. We can probably name on two hands, we can count the number of reporters we really believe with Mavericks stuff.
Probably one, but
yeah. Deandre Ayton, this is from Tim McMahon, quote, Deandre Ayton is a name I've heard around the Mavericks. That would be more of a later rather than right now situation. They do both have the same agent, Luka and Ayton, with Bill Duffy. And so that really perked my ears up because that's a very interesting hypothetical. Seems like the Mavericks have just had internal talks about it. They're talking about probably all the stars in the league. They've talked about Zach LaVine. We've heard that publicly. They've talked about, a bunch of different guys as who can be the next star next to Luka, or who can give Luka some help, who can bring in and plug some holes for this Dallas Mavericks team. And Ayton is just a really fascinating name because I think, one, he does fit a lot of holes for all the faults. You saw every single one of them in the Mavs Suns game recently where he went 4 of 16 in the first half, and you're just like, how are you not dominating Dwight Powell right now? Like, every center has been dominating the Mavericks with all their injuries and stuff, and he just couldn't dominate. And he still played good rim defense and had like 20 rebounds in that game. So you can see where he would fill a lot of the holes. And I'm just curious, if that's a direction that if you were the Mavericks, you would consider going down. Like, should these talks have happened?
I'm so fascinated to see what happens with Phoenix because, if you forgot what happened, over the summer and stuff, it was really sticky about Ayton, really their playoffs ended with, the Dallas, if y'all don't remember, the Mavs in Game 7 playoffs. It's a pretty good beatdown. If you don't remember, you can reach out to Brendan Clean, host of Locked On Suns.
Oh, leave Brendan alone. Leave Brendan alone.
Anyway, Ayton, Monty, Williams and stuff, they didn't seem like they're on the same page, all these different reports.
Not on the same page. They didn't talk to him from the end of Game 7 till the start of the next season that Monty Williams didn't talk to Deandre Ayton. Like, that was a red flag for everybody. Red flag.
So on top of that, another red flag is he signed an offer sheet with another team. And so he signed it with the Pacers. Suns decided to match really quick. So a little bit of rocky start to training camp for this season for Ayton and the Suns. The season hasn't gone, as planned, if we, pretty comfortable saying that. So if they look to shake up things, I mean, some people are speculating Chris Paul stuff already. Is it DeAndre Ayton? Do they try to get out ahead of, the Ayton stuff? Do they do it now? Do they do it over the summer? And if Dallas came calling, or like McMahon said, names been mentioned around the Mavs and stuff, the Duffy connection is real. Luka and him have a relationship. Sure. I think there was even a clip the other day of them having like a shooting competition, I think from half court pregame before that Suns game the other day in Phoenix. Obviously they came in the same draft together and all of that. And, if you're Dallas, you look at it from, the money part is the biggest thing for him. He's 24 years old. He makes $30.9 million this year. He just signed that big, they matched his contract, but after this year's 32.4, then it's 34, then it's 35.5. So you ask yourself the question, hey, how do you feel about paying a 7-footer $30 million in this economy?
Nick, that's a good question.
I don't have one that says Isaac. I need to like edit one together that says Isaac. That's a good question.
In this economy, $30 million for a 7-footer.
Yeesh.
But it all depends on the trade package to me. I have no clue what his trade value would be. There's one side of me that says there's no way this new owner is going to come in and say, hey, we're going to trade DeAndre Ayton and not get back multiple first or an all-star or something like that. There's another side of me too that could say, all right, like who's going to pay multiple first for a $30 million center in this economy, and we kind of want to right the ship with our chemistry and all that stuff. So I would be, long story short, I would be very interested if I was Dallas for the right price. There you go, but not as my second star all-in trade package.
Yeah, this to me, even with this name, is not the soon as they got Ayton, and McMahon said this on the pod. It was like, that's not a name you feel like super good about where you're like, oh, we got Ayton and we're good. Like okay, that's it. That's the second star. But I think that there's a case that can be made if you get Ayton, plugs up your rebounding hole, plugs up your, like rim defender hole, plugs up your who defends like Jokic and some of these guys in the playoffs. It helps and it solves a lot of problems that you would have. And Luka can help solve some of those other ones. I know that he's playing with Chris Paul now, but he can roll to the rim and he can shoot a little bit. And maybe with the Mavericks, they can help develop his shot a little bit better than what the Suns have done. And like maybe just a new change of scenery could even help him. The big question though is
that's a given, yeah.
Yeah, the big question though is, do you want to pay a center that much money? The last time you and I had this exact conversation of how much is he really worth? Like, is he gonna go for like a first? Is it just for salary relief? Was Rudy Gobert? Like, we literally had this exact same conversation, and then he went for the biggest package we've ever seen for an NBA player that didn't make any sense. And so I really don't know. The Suns also have new ownership. All the laundry list things that you mentioned about the Suns is very true with them wanting to make some moves. New owners always want to make like a splashy move to switch things up and to put their own stamp on something. And Jay Crowder's like not playing for them. Veteran guy, respected around the league, just decided, y'all, I'm out. Like, I don't want to play this season for you guys. That's another kind of thing that would make a team really want to make a big move or like a splashy move or something. And McMahon even said this is probably a later down the road move rather than right now for the Mavs. But it is really interesting to think about, could the Mavericks get Ayton The plan for me, hypothetically, all right, they go get Ayton. They have to maybe send him a couple of firsts. It's, some salaries, maybe Josh Green's in the deal or something. And then you still have to go get another ball handler. And maybe if you get like a B ball handler, like another Dinwiddie level type ball handler, then all of a sudden, can Luka, Dinwiddie, another ball handler, and Ayton, and a defense with Dorian and Bullock and, Maxey, can that win you a title? And I believe, if you don't believe you shouldn't be here, I kind of believe Luka could do it. I believe that the offense would be good enough that they could make it work if the defense was elite. And if you plug those holes, it would fix so many different things. But coming up, let's talk about some real stuff. Let's talk about what's happening.
I got one more thing about the Ayton thing.
Let's finish talking about Ayton, and we'll talk about the real stuff between the Mavs and the Jazz. There are real connections. There are some that the Dallas Mavericks and Jazz have talked about the frameworks of deals and stuff. So we'll talk about that coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about FanDuel. Speaking of real stuff, you can bet on some real stuff in the NBA, in the NFL, all kinds of things at FanDuel. And right now you can go and get their deal right now for the Super Bowl, the big game. Super Bowl 57. Get a no sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything for the money line, point spreads, on who will score a touchdown, all that kind of stuff. So go check it out. What kind of lines do they have? Do I dare look at it? Well, who do you think is favored in the Super Bowl right now? Chiefs, Eagles. Eagles technically the home team.
I'd say Eagles by like 3.5.
Eagles 1.5. The Super Bowl is always really, really tight. They don't always give you that big line. Super Bowl MVP.
Pat Mahomes.
Pat Mahomes plus 120. Jalen Hurts plus 125. Travis Kelce plus 1,300.
Where's AJ Brown?
AJ Brown plus 1,400, right behind Travis Kelce there. So there's some interesting stuff on FanDuel. Again, go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to get your no sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, Isaac Harris, we've been talking about Deandre Ayton. It was a rumor, maybe a whisper. What's like a level under rumor? It's like whisper. There's like a whispers. Sending my birds out and all their little whispers. What's the Game of Thrones?
All the ravens.
My ravens send out in their whispers. The Mavs have had internal discussions about Deandre Ayton, and that's a name that maybe they're looking at down the road. Will the Suns maybe want to move him? Ayton wanted to move himself, and so maybe that's a name that they could be attached to. Do you want to pay a center that much? Can the Mavericks cobble together an elite enough defense with Luka, Dinwiddie, still have to go get another ball handler? Is that enough for you?
It's tough. I was thinking about it, and I was like, all right, it's hard to even talk about this because it's going to sound like all these guys, like, you don't even know his trade value. Everybody's going to be arguing about Ayton's trade value if it comes out next, 48 hours that Suns are shopping Ayton. Like, you're just not going to have a clue what they're going to be asking for or what they can get. What if Dallas called him and said, all right, Ayton and Crowder for Christian Wood, Tim Hardaway, Josh Green, and a first.
Oh,
and I'm not saying I'll do it or anything, but you look at it from Dallas's perspective and say, all right, so now your starting lineup is Luka, Dinwiddie, Reggie, Dorian, and Ayton.
Well, you probably put Crowder in there just to make him happy.
Sure. And then off the bench, you have
Maxey. You have Maxey, you have Bullock, you still have Dwight. I guess you still have Hardy, but you have to get one more ball handler. That's like a must. If you're going anywhere in the playoffs, you have to get one more. And so, but that, like, I texted you this when we were talking about this conversation. Like, Sean Sweeney is licking his chops if he could get Ayton and Crowder somehow, and he has a defensive rotation of Ayton at the center spot. They've died for a player like that. He'd fit right into the defensive system. He can rotate.
Maxey would fit really well with him.
Maxey can play with him at the same time. You have Ayton, Dorian, Crowder, Bullock, and Maxey. That is a defensive rotation that Sean Sweeney would really faint. He'd be like, oh my gosh, I have so many answers on defense now. The Mavericks would bounce right back, I think, to being a really great defense. They would have some issues. Like, you still have to add another ball handler. The offense wouldn't be great. But the Mavericks are number one in the NBA in half-court offense this year. So it's like Luka just makes your team that much better. It's kind of 2011-ish again, right? Like, that team is really 2011-y all of a sudden. Like, the Mavs, Dirk just covered so many holes and made them so good on the offensive end that they just needed an elite defense, and boom, they were there. They could beat anybody.
Yeah. We can move on to the Dorian Jazz stuff. It's just... I'm not all out on it. I'm also not running to the airport right now. I'd say running, not driving because the ice. But
you would slip and slide.
I would talk myself into it. There's the idea of paying it big, that much money just scares the crap out of me in this economy. But Ayton is one that I would like consider and take the chance on, possibly. I'm like doing a ton of caveats right now.
But because it depends on the package. Like we did this exact same conversation about Gobert. Like, okay, maybe at least Ayton is a better. My computer just made like a really it was a commercial about driving. Issa Rae is driving down a futuristic like turnpike.
With the drunk driving thing?
I don't know what it is. I'm on Basketball Reference looking at Ayton's stats. So like Gobert was a whole other conversation, but with Ayton, at least you have a baseline offensively. I know he missed a bunch of shots the other day, but he can at least shoot the ball. He's better as a rim roller than Gobert is. Like you at least have a baseline there. With
Gobert's money was in a whole different stratosphere.
Gobert's completely different money, and we didn't know what his price was. So we were talking about it with like, all right, what if they could just get him for like a first, like this conversation? Probably wouldn't happen with Ayton. It wasn't. Yeah, didn't happen with Gobert.
With 3 first, and I would be like, okay, I can't.
Right, and then I'd be out on it. Like that's just too steep a price. You still have to fix other holes, but if you could fix a couple holes, Ayton is one that would definitely fill some holes there. Let's talk about the Mavs and the Jazz because Brian Windhorst fingers. There's something going on in Utah. Everybody seems like there's a lot of reports coming out that they are dangling a package. Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt are definitely names that have been thrown around. Definitely seems like they're going to be sellers going into this deadline, which we all thought they were going to be sellers all season. They started the season really hot, and then that conversation stopped, and now they're in the 10th place and only like a half game back from the Mavs, like a game back from the Mavs, and now all of a sudden they're sellers. What are your thoughts on the Jazz are interested in Dorian, Beasley, Vanderbilt, that sort of package that seems to have been proposed?
Yeah, I need to text McMahon and tell him I feel like I just watched his face all day today because, watched the thing on YouTube of him and Lowe. Then he had Brian Windhorst on his YouTube channel, which if you're not subscribed to that, go subscribe to that.
Howdy Partners.
And he had Wendy on there, literally just talking all about the Jazz. Talked a little Mavs in there, but when they were talking about the Jazz, one, I thought it was funny how McMahon was saying how he was in Salt Lake recently, and how he met with basically their whole front office and how happy they were about their situation right now, about being sellers and trading these guys. And he was talking about that package a lot. He's like, it feels like to a lot of teams in the league, they're hearing, they're shopping that Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt package, which when you look at it, it's around what? When you add those two guys up together,
like 17 million, something like that.
Yeah, 17-18 million dollars. Beasley's around that 15 mark. Vanderbilt's around that 3 or 4 mark.
Yeah, 4.3.
Somewhere through there. So, it's really intriguing when you look at. I'm a believer in Vanderbilt probably more than some. I've just always liked his game, and Beasley is kind of like a little bit. I feel like we do this a lot. A little bit of Tim Hardaway Spider-Man meme.
Oh, no. It's completely. He's a 4 years younger version of Tim. I literally tweeted out their stats today. Go look at their stats side by side. Almost literally identical. Like Malik even takes more threes than Tim does somehow. Like I don't know how that could happen, but someone does.
Yeah. So if I was Dallas, I would be looking at Utah saying, hey, I need extra compensation, right? Like if I'm going to entertain a Dorian for those two guys, Dorian's better than those two guys, I believe. And it's like, hey, I'm going to need extra, whether it's a draft pick, whether it's, another young player. I don't know what it is, but that's what I would have to want for Dallas. But Dallas's situation though, is it may, like the conversation with Lowe and McMahon was so intriguing to me is, all right, if their goal right now is to still find the second star, the co-star next to Luka, what is their plan for this deadline? And, McMahon said a very, precise thing on that podcast of they're not trying to get marginally better right now. They want a championship and they want to build towards that. And they know they got to swing for that next big deal. So do you try to trade off one or two of the guys before the deadline to get assets that you can keep while still staying, good and be in the playoffs and
mildly competitive is probably.
Yeah. But you also gain a few more assets for the summer to help you make that bigger trade, or that part was just really intriguing. Zach Lowe said, take one tiny step back to take a massive step forward. You're coming up, and the key figure in all of that is Luka Doncic and how Luka feels to this, because it's hard to tell an MVP of, hey, we're going to take a step back.
Again, because the Porzingis one we thought was going to be that too. It ended up not being the case, but
yeah,
like that's doing the same type of moves that you did last year, and you had a different result than last year. But yeah, let's talk about that coming up. Should the Mavericks be sellers? Should they?
No. I can't hear that word.
Should they stockpile and work for a future move? We'll talk about that coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about Built Bar. Actually, Isaac Harris, tell them about Built Bar.
Oh, I just got a Built Bar. I got a package of Built Bars. Can we do a little ASMR?
Do it.
From Sam's Club.
Hold on, do that again. I didn't hear it literally at all.
Is that great?
I didn't hear anything. I think your noise gate is like perfectly doesn't get the crackling of the wrapper.
Anyway, got a package of Built Bars at Sam's Club the other day. It was a double package of 2 different flavors in there. It was a package of puffs.
Oh yeah.
And in the package, I have the brownie batter and the churro. And I just ate a churro puff right before we hit record. Such a great, healthy snack.
Delicious. You can get them at Sam's Club. You can get them at Walmart now in the DFW area. Isaac went to a Sam's Club in the DFW area and got them. So go check them out. It's a protein bar. It tastes like a candy bar. You can also still get them at built.com. All right, Isaac Harris, we're talking about the Dallas Mavericks. There have been whispers, rumors, talks about what the Dallas Mavericks will do at the deadline. We're, of course, going to talk about them every single day, 5 days a week. 7 days a week until the trade deadline. So we're going to continue to do our trade deadline dash. The Mavs feel pressure to upgrade before the deadline. They definitely do. But like, what kind of pressure is that? And can the Mavericks negotiate with Luka and say, hey, we're going to take a step back, get some assets, and this summer we're going for the big move? That's a big promise to make. That is a promise to, first of all, that is a promise that you make if and only if you can follow through on it. Do the Dallas Mavericks know that they can follow through on that? No. Right? Because no one does. Like, no one knows who's going to be available, what's going to happen. Somebody's going to have a really disappointing end of their season and decide to sell, or maybe nobody will, and everybody will be just stacked atop each other and think, like, we're one move away from jumping up into top 4 in the West, right? We're one move away from jumping into the play-in. And so that's what the play-in has done to the NBA. It means everybody more competitive, and the games matter a little bit more, and all that stuff. The games have been more exciting, and
get the ribbons out.
More postseason. But with the Dallas Mavericks, though, what are your thoughts? Should they become a seller? It seems like they're already talking about, Christian Wood, Tim Hardaway Jr. has been out there in deals. Now Dorian's name's being mentioned. Should the Mavericks be complete sellers?
I don't think they trade Dorian unless it's, unless it's to get the main guy. We're talking about the Ayton thing. What if Ayton's price isn't as high as what a lot of us think it is? And it is something of what we hypothetically threw out in the last segment. What if you rope in a third team into that then? And then it's Dorian going to Utah, and you get a first back from Utah, and there's all this stuff, and you still get like some ass. Like, I don't know. That's the whole part of it that gets you. Luka is so close to Dorian, and Dorian means so much to this team, that I don't think they're just going to like trade. It would floor me. You would not have a fun pod with me if they did a Dorian for Malik Beasley straight up. That just ain't gonna happen.
I don't know if we would do a pod that day. I think we would.
What's the opposite of an emergency pod?
No, we would do it in remembrance, or we'd have a grieving period. I think you and I would have to have. But I think one of the reasons I thought that Dorian's name was out there a little bit, and the Jazz are definitely interested. McMahon made that clear that Jazz are interested in Dorian. That's real. But I think
very real.
Like the Mavs are like sending him out there as like a feeler, just to like build his trade value up a little bit. And then if they are going to trade him, it would have to be for a move that makes Luka happy, right? Where he's like, I hate losing Dorian. That's great, but I get to play with Bam Adebayo. I get to play with, like another star out there, Zach LaVine, somebody out there that would come in and immediately make the Mavericks take that step forward we've been waiting for. The other thing is, We've been saying this whole time that the Mavs just need a second star. That's all they need is a second star because they already have role players. It's Luka and a bunch of role players. That's what the Mavericks are right now. They need that second other guy. But if you start giving away all these pieces and trading all these pieces and then take all those assets and give it for a second star better be pretty dang good because all of a sudden now you don't have any role players.
But there's no guarantee that you even get the guy.
For sure.
So it's like, I understand keeping the assets. And it's like, I know some of you are saying, well, why'd you Giannis and all that stuff. I was in that camp of like save some of the assets. I'm not saying go out there.
You didn't give anybody up to save money for Giannis that year.
That's the difference. I'm not going out to spend all the assets I have right now for a chance at something this summer. What I'm not willing to do is like trade off some good pieces this year to fully punt on the season. Because we all thought Donovan Mitchell was going to the Knicks. Well, the Knicks still have all their picks and everything waiting to make a deal for a second star. Like they really want a second star right now. They don't have anybody. Like
they need a first star still.
Well, yeah, first star. But it's like there are teams that have assets now. I mean, Pelicans have 1 million picks. The Thunder have 1 million picks. There's other teams out there that are gathering assets, also good young players that are waiting to pounce on the next star available. So there's no guarantee that Dallas could even get that guy. One of the things that was really intriguing to me, or kind of intriguing, was just the Christian Wood talk between Lowe and McMahon on that. That, McMahon said Christian Wood was the name that, most likely to be traded for Dallas for him. I kind of wish we could just clip that whole McMahon segment on Christian Wood to play it on this pod for all the crap that I've gotten for stuff that I've talked about. But
we could just replay some of our segments we've talked about. I feel like we're very much on the same wavelength about this Christian Wood thing. And the Mavs,
a lot of it wasn't even like our opinions. It was what we've been hearing.
Yeah.
And it's like, because we just never hyped him up as the next, second star next to Luka. It's like, I'm just not hearing all this stuff. So, but, so him talking about that and what, stuff that they could get, back for him. What was the phrase?
Yeah, I was going to say, the bullet points about what he said was, nobody really thinks that he has value. The Mavs could maybe get a late first for him, the same that they gave up for him to get him, that they maybe could get that for a team. The Mavericks are still interested in doing a 2-year deal with him, but they're not looking to commit to him long term. The 4-year deal, some kind of re-signing him this offseason. They also don't want to lose him for nothing. They don't want to do they're scared off by the Brunson thing. They should be. That was a huge mistake all around. And they're scared off to just lose him for nothing. So it seems like they're going to do some kind of move with him. Either it's going to be
and he said that what he's heard around the league, there's not a ton of teams. This is kind of like his almost direct phrasing. There's not a ton of teams lining up to sign up for the Christian Wood experience this summer.
No.
In free agency. So
there wasn't this summer. And the Rockets tried to trade him for a year and just settled on that late Mavericks pick. And so maybe the Mavericks get that back. And so now you're talking, all right, well, you trade Christian Wood for a first-round pick. That's great for this offseason, but that's selling. You're selling a piece that's helping you now that will help you more later. Like, you're not getting...
I don't think Luka would be thrilled about that either.
No.
Luka likes playing with it, especially if you don't make any other moves. Like, if they just straight up went out, traded Christian Wood for a first-round pick that's going to be late in the 20s, I don't think Luka's going to be a fan of that, right? Like,
or even do like the Tim Hardaway for Karis LeVert deal that we've heard before. Like, they do that deal, and then they trade off Christian Wood. Like, your team's not better, right? Like that's not making.
Luka's like, I've seen Tim in transition, so I mean, I'm kind of
Karis LeVert has to be better than Tim in transition. Sorry, Tim. I can't see one more layup anymore not go through. But that's where the Mavericks are. So we'll see what happens with Christian Wood. He is still the number one guy that seems to be traded. Him and Tim are definitely available, and like
them too.
If the Mavericks could get some assets for him, that'd be better for them in the long run, I think. Because I don't think you want to trade Dorian. We talked about that. You can't trade Maxey yet. Reggie Bullock, like, he was so great in the playoffs last year. These are proven playoff players that can go in and do some stuff. Spencer Dinwiddie still has to prove a little bit more in the playoffs, I think, after last year's run. But we know he can go in and do some stuff.
You can't give up Dinwiddie right now because you have no other ball handler in your roster.
Literally none other.
And Spencer's playing really good basketball too. So you're trying to add a ball handler, not get rid of the only other one.
Right. So this is where the Mavericks are. I don't think they can be complete sellers, but I do think that Christian Wood and Tim Hardaway could be sold off in a certain in certain deals. The Mavericks would probably take a step backwards if they're just getting assets back instead of players right now. And then they go for the big swing this summer. It's been the play since the beginning of the season, and here we are still.
Yeah, because we just don't think. I mean, let's see what the biggest name's going to be, dealt before the trade deadline. Is it OG? Is it Van Vliet?
It could be nobody. It could be like Christian Wood is like the biggest name that's dealt, right? That happens a lot of trade deadlines.
Yeah.
It's a ton of moves, but none of them are super consequential. It's just a bunch of moving parts to try and plug some holes here and there.
And you're still in the camp that you wouldn't give up both first for OG, right?
After that Pistons game, I'm like, I think I might be in on OG, but I don't. I think you'd have to give. So I talked to Sean Woodley recently, our Locked On Raptors host, and I was like, okay, what if they did Josh Green 2 first? And he's like, what about throw Dorian in there too? And I was like, Dorian, Josh 2 first, like that's too much for me. What if he just did Josh 2 firsts and Tim for the salary? And then Sean's like, I don't think that gets it done. I think other teams can beat that. And so at that point, Shark Tank, I'm out.
Yeah. Interesting.
Let us know in the comment section. What do you think about the Mavs being sellers? What do you think about the Deandre Ayton situation? Should the Mavericks pursue that? Let us know in the comments. Subscribe to the podcast. We'll be doing a trade deadline dash through the trade deadline every single day, 7 days a week. And guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom.